Malia, where are you right now?
I am currently in Denver, Colorado at Amanda's house, actually.
Keeping it
Yeah.
in the fam.
Mm-hmm. And you are in your second home.
In a shocking turn of events, I am still in Tulum, yes. So still, yeah, we're in opposite places. You're in the snow and I am in the sunshine.
Yeah, and like right on par with what we're talking about. Of course, we're traveling.
Yes.
Okay, so I think first off, we should explain because people like right now, I still get comments like, are you not working? Are you whatever? Like, so Katie and I are on leave at the moment, which means
Yes.
we're still employed.
Yes.
We just have downtime, which is shocking. I know.
Yeah, so we're employed on a like full contract, a permanent contract, and that can be up to our decision to leave that or if you get fired. But yeah, no, so we are actually on what we call rotation. So it's a really common thing in the industry right now for people to be on rotation. So right now we do 2 months on, 2 months off, and a lot of boats are going towards that way, really. Just because obviously from what you guys see on the show and if you follow all these yachties on Instagram, like we work our goddamn asses off for stupid amount of hours for months on end. So it only makes sense and it's more appealing. Like you want to join a boat that sort of offers this. So that's basically what we're doing right now. We're on our rotation. We're on our downtime.
Woohoo!
Yay.
And of course, during our downtime, we're traveling. I hit the snow. I wanted to get a ski trip in. Katie hit the beach, obviously.
Yes, I'm in my second home, Tulum. I know I come back here often, but when you've been traveling for as long as I have, when you find a place that just kind of feels like home, it's a lot closer than home. And obviously since the pandemic, for a very long time, for 2 years, I could not actually get back to New Zealand. So I kind of made Mexico my home and now it's sort of stuck and I have a lot of friends here and I love it.
I mean, it's not a bad second home.
It's not a bad second home.
Okay, so those are places that we're familiar with. But today's episode, we are going to talk about the places we've been, whether it was in yachting or not. I think for both of us, we weren't in yachting. And anyway, the biggest culture shock that we've had.
Yeah.
Places that we've gone far afield.
Yeah, like obviously, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to travel. And for myself, I know Malia and I'm sure a lot of other people in our shoes, going to different cultures, like it's what really humbles me. Like it's like education, it's learning. Like I love it. It's something that really like is food for my soul. I'm addicted to it. That's why I travel so much. Like I do feel like you become a better person just understanding different cultures and different parts of the world and respecting these cultures. So me and Malia decided to talk about, I guess, the one place we went where it was just like so far-fetched to our normal. So Malia, where was that for you?
Okay, so mine, and I would say for like a lot of Americans, leaving the United States is a big deal, right? But I've been traveling since I was young. My mom was a flight attendant. My family always traveled. I went on my first like solo trip when I was like 16.
Wow.
But the place that I went that had the biggest culture shock, and this is after I've been all through Southeast Asia, like I'd been backpacking for months on my own and with friends. And then my brother was like, come to Micronesia. And I was like, Micronesia? What am I
Where is
there?
that? Where is that? Some people might not actually know where that is. That's a good point. So
Micronesia is one of the 4 federated states, Chuuk, where I went, is one of 4 sorry, this is really confusing. So Chuuk is one of the 4 federated states of Micronesia, and that's where I was going. So I was going to the Chuuk Lagoon. Sometimes you hear it referred to as the Truck Lagoon. And it's a huge scuba diving mecca.
Amazing.
What it's not is very developed.
Right.
And my brother at the time, my oldest brother, Chris, was working for a non-profit organization, and they were building like water catchment systems for the island. And it had just been hit by a storm and the infrastructure was like really not developed. So I really had no idea what I was going into. And then, yeah, it ended up being a big shock. So, I mean, I'll get into that. But so, yeah, I'm going to be talking about Micronesia. Katie,
I am going to
you're
be talking about. So this was actually really random how this trip came about. I wasn't yachting at the time. Me and my boyfriend, who I was with for a while, whenever we had leave together, the one condition that he had is that we always had to go somewhere with surf. So we were going to go to Sri Lanka, and we were planning a trip around Sri Lanka, and then when I started doing research, I kind of realized how close India and Sri Lanka were. And, you know, one of my dreams is to do all the seven wonders of the world, being the Taj Mahal is in India. So I kind of said to my boyfriend, I was like, let's just stop in India for like 4 or 5 days, go out, see the Taj Mahal, and continue on to Sri Lanka. And he was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then we sort of like, the more people we started talking to, they're like, well, if you're going to India, you have to go here, you have to do this, you have to do this. So we ended up, I think, spending 3 weeks there. I do not remember, but wow, like it was just the most opposite place I've ever been in the world. It's just, the way to describe India is it's like this colorful, chaotic, like it's just constant, the noise, the people, but it's so weird and beautiful and crazy. But it was just, yeah, I saw a lot of things there that have really stuck with me, and I really cherished it actually. Like at the time, like people think these places are like going on holiday. Like I always say to people, there's a difference to a vacation or a holiday where, you know, you go to the Maldives or you go to Hawaii and you're drinking your pina colada on the sun lounger. Like that's a holiday. When you go to places like Micronesia or India or Sri Lanka, you're exploring, like you're there to see the culture, see the world, see what this country has to offer, go see the architecture, learn about the history, learn about the religions. And
yeah,
that's
it's
exactly
like an immersive experience rather
it
than just
really
like a
is. And
vacation.
like I always found, like in yachting, you know, you kind of get caught up in this world that we live in, you know, working for the top 1%, going to all these beautiful places that we're very fortunate, but it kind of can take away from you a little bit. You kind of like end up living in this bubble, which isn't real because it's not actually our life. Like we're not actually living life like that. We're just fortunate enough to be sort of brought on for the ride. So it was always important to me to sort of like bring myself back down to gravity, to the world, and be like, okay, like humbleize yourself and, you know, go and see places like this and really educate yourself on, you know, I guess the struggles in other countries in the world. And that was definitely something I came across in India. It was a lot. It was
Yeah,
a lot.
I think people always ask us, you know, like, oh, what's your favorite place that you've been? And I always ask, well, in yachting or not in yachting? Because there's a huge difference. Like there's these beautiful places that our boats go, and don't get me wrong, it's amazing to get to experience them. But like you're saying, there's also a huge difference between, you know, showing up on a super yacht or like backpacking out of a backpack and living by your own means, which is far different.
Very different.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. So for me, Micronesia, I went because my brother was there, which was lucky because I wasn't by myself. But I think talking about going to these places, like I had really no idea what to expect, and I was bleach blonde at the time.
It's kind of the best way, to be fair. But
yeah, well, I was actually ending my backpacking trip in Asia, so I was in Malaysia, and my brother was like, "Okay, near Malaysia, just hop some
on over
flights."
here.
And he was he was like, "Oh, and by the way, you need to dye your hair before you come out here." And I was like, what? Because I was bleach blonde, and he was like, yeah, it's just be safer if you had brown hair. Like if you weren't just bleach blonde, young female.
Yeah.
He's like, just do me a favor, dye your hair, make it easier and safer. And I was like, okay. So then I was like, well, where am I going? Maybe I should start looking these things up. And I think for a lot of women in particular, like places like India, and apparently Micronesia, we do have to look up certain things, So at the time there was, I when I'm traveling, I like to go to the government like websites and read about the place and what like advisories or warnings are in place. I don't know if you do that, but and just so travelers know, you can sign up. So if you're an American, you can sign up to get these advisories sent to your phone. So like, for
It's like
example,
live updates of sort of stuff
yeah,
going on that could affect you basically while you're in this country.
yeah, and it's helped me so much while I've been traveling. Like when I was
Safety.
in Asia, they'll let you know like, oh, there were riots here, or
Yeah.
there was a flood in this part, whatever. And they'll just give you constant updates so you have an idea, and then where to go. So they'll give you like embassy information and,
Yeah.
where you can check in as an American citizen. So, anyways, I was looking up the advisories for Micronesia, and at the
You're like,
time,
where am I going?
yeah, and it was like women, specifically women traveling alone. You may be subject to some form of harassment, sexual
Yeah.
assaults do occur. Like these
Mhm.
things, I mean, obviously this can happen anywhere, but it's just good
Yeah.
to
I had a
know.
similar experience in India.
Yeah. And then the interesting one was like avoid traveling alone or after dark. I was like, well,
Good.
interesting because I'm gonna go there alone, but luckily, meet up with my brother. But my brother
Yeah.
was like, yeah, you're not. He's like, when you get here, you will stay at the like one compound that they had.
Yeah.
You don't go out after dark. You're basically here to scuba dive and hang out with me, and that's
Mhm.
that. You don't go
Yeah.
out after dark. You're not going to bar. Well, there weren't bars, but yeah,
Wow.
interesting.
It is. And, I had a similar experience when I was in India. And I think, for people like us, we're well traveled, or even like our countries, we have all people from all around the world, So we're kind of used to how people look, people's images from different parts of the world. So it's not like uncommon for us to walk down the street and be like, oh, like that's different. It's like, oh, they're from wherever, When I was in India, I had lighter hair at the time, and I have really like hazel green, they're very bizarre eyes, and they can really stand out. And I was in a car and we were driving out of Delhi, I think. We're actually driving to Agra, if I remember correctly. I think that's where the Taj Mahal is. And we had people on scooters chasing me, like knocking on the door. And my boyfriend had to put like a sarong over my head because they just wouldn't leave us alone. They were just like staring at us and stuff because I did look very different. And I've actually had a similar thing in Morocco as well. So, I mean, yeah, for women, you do have to be careful. I would always suggest never traveling alone in some of these countries just because it is a shock for them. It's not necessarily saying it's a bad country. It's just we obviously look like we don't belong there. So if people are going to target us, you are a prime target at that point because they're like, okay, well, she's not a local. She's not from this country. She doesn't speak the language. She doesn't know what's going on if anything happens, And saying that, there are a lot of places in the world I would travel alone, and we can get to that in further episodes. But yeah, no, it's a lot. And I think for them, we're experiencing a culture shock, but then on their end, they're also experiencing a culture shock by seeing somebody like us or, just that looks so out of their normal, especially if you're going to a place that not a lot of people go to. And like when we're in India, like, hey, we flew into Delhi and Delhi was crazy and chaotic and there was just so much going on. But I didn't notice it as much there because obviously it's like a tourism hub. It's like one of the big airports is where you fly into. And then the further you got out of Delhi, so we had this driver for the whole time we were there, and we would drive for like 7 hours a day into like the middle of nowhere, like literally the roads were not roads, they were potholes. So we're like in the back of this car, like our heads going like those bobby, those things that people put, like that's what it was, actually super uncomfortable for hours on end because we were only there for such a short time and we wanted to achieve so much. So we went to like all these amazing places. But yeah, the further we got out of Delhi is like when I really had the culture shock, and just, yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. But in saying that, I think like on a whole, it's probably one of the most beautiful places I've been in terms of like okay, it is a poorer country, but they have so many different religions, right? Like I remember there was this one street in Delhi and there was like a Buddhist temple, there was a mosque, there was a Catholic church, there was like, a Hindu temple, like all in a row, like all these places of worship or whatever religion you were into. And the respect for each religion, like everyone's just coming in and out of these places all on the same road, and there's no animosity, like no one cared, there wasn't like any trouble, where I feel like in other parts of the world there probably would be, or would be a lot more segregated. So like that
Yeah.
was one of the most powerful things I took away from India, where people just really respected. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are, what your faith is, who you worship or how you worship. You go to whatever you want to do and you do you. And it was something I really remembered. I'm like, wow, this is fucking insane. Like the rest of the world needs to be up on this shit. Like why,
Yeah, that's true.
it was amazing. It was super amazing. So like, yeah, I feel like you go through these highs and lows in these like crazy countries that, are so far from your normal.
Yeah, I think so. I wanted to back when I was in Asia, we wanted to go to India. We wanted to fly to India and continue backpacking. But at the time, they were saying, it's not great for female travelers alone,
Right. Right.
which I think for India is still,
Yeah. Look, I
there
mean,
is a bit of a, there is a bit of a culture there. I don't know. I haven't done it. I don't know that I would. India's, even for me, someone who's traveled a lot, India is the place that I probably wouldn't go as a female alone. I have friends who
no,
have done it and they've been
I
fine,
wouldn't. Yeah.
but
I think
it does
in
make me,
India, if you're going to places like Goa, so Goa is like at the bottom of India, it's on the coast, so it's waterfront. That's a big travel hub as well. It's a big yoga hub. So I think if you're going straight to somebody like that, where you have the chance to really meet a lot of Western people, because it's a big party place as well, Goa. So that's kind of, I'm not saying this is the safest thing to do, but I'm saying if you were going to do India, that's how I would do it if I was planning to do it alone. I don't
yeah.
know if I would.
And India is such a
Or
big place. Like you're saying, it's not fair to like categorize it just
yeah,
to
for
one.
sure. And no, I would never. Like it was like one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
And I think like what we're saying, like the style of travel is also very important
It's
to note
yeah,
because like if you're backpacking and you're staying really cheap, like when I went to Asia, I was backpacking, I was going super cheap, staying in like the dirtiest
yeah,
hostels.
yeah,
So like that makes a huge difference. Like versus like let's say you're older and you're traveling by yourself and you're staying in a resort or like a gated
yeah.
area. Like there's so many different styles of traveling, so we have to
It's
note that as
also
well.
funny though, like I always say to people, like the amount of times, like, we did this in India a lot actually, because we knew where we wanted to go. So, like, one of my biggest places, I wanted to go to Rishikesh. I'm a massive yogi. If anyone that's a yogi knows,
Mm-hmm.
Rishikesh is the hub where yoga was first originated from. So, obviously, yoga, all the terminology is in Sanskrit, which is Hindu, which is from India, right? So, that was really important to me. And then I also wanted to go to Dharamshala, which is almost on the back of Nepal, or like the Himalayas, where the Dalai Lama's temple is.
Mm.
But to get there, again, it was days of travel in between. So we were trying to cram like all
Oh,
this
that's
stuff.
interesting.
But like, yeah, we would travel for days just to get to because you couldn't just fly to these places. And some of the accommodations, so we would just, book it like the day before, and like you're like, oh, that's a 4-star, that looks good, and you walk in and you're like, I cannot sleep here, like. But it kind of, that's what makes traveling, is once you be able to like experience those experiences, and just have to get to a point where you're like, okay, well, fuck it, like I've got somewhere to have a shower and put my head down, like it's good.
I
It
think some of
sucks
the
at the time,
times
but
I think some of the times I felt the most unsafe during traveling are actually like taxis. Like I've been
yes,
in taxis in foreign countries and I'm like, it's like really late at night. I'm in the back of a taxi by myself in a
I'm
country,
drunk.
like in like, wherever. And I'm like, this could go one of two ways.
I know, I
But
know.
so yeah. So I guess like for me in Micronesia, one of the biggest like eye-opening moments was one of the in Micronesia, when you get there, well, so first of all, flying into Micronesia, there's just like this little hut. Like it's not an airport. They just have like a hut and like someone there with like a clipboard. There's no like jet bridge. There's nothing. You just like
Yeah.
walk off the plane. There's like gravel, and you just get to this hut, and they're like, look at the clipboard, look at you, and they're like, oh yeah, you can come in. And it's just why, and like the culture there is just wild because it's not like something I'd experienced before. It's still very
Untouched and raw, probably.
yeah, very raw and very like kind of tribal in a sense. It's still like an island nation. And um yeah, I just remember my brother was like, right, get in the truck. There, like, we had like security guards, and then we get to this like hotel, and around the island is this reef and these shipwrecks that bring divers from all over the world. But usually people that go there, they go on a liveaboard. They don't actually stay on the island. So the island's
my dad's
really...
actually done one of those in Papua New Guinea, and Papua New
so
Guinea is very
Papua New
similar.
Guinea.
Yeah.
Well, it's very near to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
So so the infrastructure on land is just nowhere. It's not ready for big tourism yet,
Yeah.
But one of the funniest parts was there's these signs, and also like the warnings that you get are for unexploded ordnance, meaning like there could be a bomb in the hills or underwater that has not been.
That's definitely not what you want to see. I want to see the signs like margaritas over here, 2 for 1 happy hour. Those are the signs I want.
Yeah, which I also experienced this in Vietnam as well. There's these signs that are like, be careful if you're going hiking like off the beaten like path, or you're taking an ATV tour and you go somewhere where like it says just like don't touch things that don't look familiar, because it could be. Yeah, which is crazy. I was like, okay, that's not your normal travel.
Get curious with that as well.
Yeah, I was just like, so obviously I went scuba diving there, and the diving, for all the divers that are listening, the diving there is absolutely phenomenal. You dive the whole, it's called the Ghost Fleet of Truk Lagoon. And it's all the World War II. I kind of
like that.
Yeah, it's all the World War II shipwrecks. So you have like these massive ships and tanks, and there's like torpedoes and gas masks. Like, it's crazy.
That's
and it's
so cool.
It's actually deemed a Japanese war memorial because of how many people died. And there's actually a part of the dive that you go through the ship, and there's a skull like in the side of the ship.
How cool that you got to experience that, though.
Yeah.
See, guys, like, I know we're kind of saying bad things, but there's so much beauty in this world. Like,
it's worth it is what I'm saying.
It's crazy. And like things that we wouldn't deem normal and other people do. Like, it's just like when I was in Rishikesh in India, and for people that don't know, cows in India are considered very sacred. So in New Zealand, we would call that tapu. That's like very sacred, like ancestral, like worship material, So like you'll be driving down the main road and like in Delhi, and there's like cars like everywhere, and there'll just be cows standing on the road, and the cows are just like going around them. And so when I was in Rishikesh, I was walking back from a yoga class, and I stood in cow shit. And then obviously our first thought is like, fuck, like, and then this lady comes up to me and goes, you've been blessed, you've been blessed, you've been blessed. Like, you're the chosen one. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go with this because it's better than just being like, shit, I stuck in cow shit. I was like, okay, I'll take that. And there's a lot of like beauty and like things like that, things that we can be like, oh no, but then other people like, no, like there's actually a really nice like meaning behind it or something like that. So,
yeah. I think to like your point too, I think for people that are wanting to go further afield and not go to like the normal travel destinations, it is just important to know kind of like what culture you are stepping into and be sensitive to that. Yeah. Respect it. Don't be like, especially Americans, like, come on, don't be the dumb American. Like,
Yeah, it's
Don't
like
expect everyone to speak English.
no, but there's so much to learn as well in these cultures. So like when we went up to Dharamshala and we went to the Dalai Lama's temple. So I don't know if a lot of people know about the Tibetan War. Like I didn't actually know a lot about it until I was in Dharamshala and I was in the Dalai Lama's temple, and there's monks and they're worshiping, and it was probably one of the most incredible moments of my life. And then I learned so much about the Tibet culture and what happened when the Chinese invaded. And it's really sad, but it was so powerful. So India had actually gifted the Dalai Lama and people from Tibet the land of Dharamshala. So like it's mainly people from Tibet or monks now that live there because they've been kicked out of their own country. So there's so much like history in this world that we don't even know. Like I didn't even know about half of that, and it's really cool to open your eyes to that and see what other cultures have been through, and just consider yourself like super fucking lucky. Like we are lucky.
I love, like you're saying, like I love when I'm traveling to these places. I love hearing history from their perspective.
And
I think
they're still
especially
living
that stood
it.
out in Vietnam because as
Yeah.
Americans, obviously we get our history of Vietnam, but then you get the Vietnamese perspective on it, and it's just
And it's
that
just
was
good
a shock.
Yeah, I think it's, and it just, that's what I'm saying. It makes you richer as a person. Like, I know a
Yeah,
lot of people think wealth is financial, but for me, I think wealth and richness comes from these experiences and
100%.
understanding like all this sort of stuff and being there to hear it from the people's mouth or being there to see it in the country that it's happened is just, it's just something you cannot take for granted. And it's definitely, I think, like one of my favorite things about being fortunate enough to really, I guess, push my limits and go to these places off the grid.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, I love like a relaxing vacation, but I think that a huge part of who I am is from like backpacking and experiencing different cultures.
100%.
And I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Like if we have younger listeners or like anyone at any age, just
Any
like
age, it
pack your
does not
bags,
matter. If you've
go
wanted to
experience it.
go, honestly, go on
Mm,
Skyscanner. You can literally, I went to Poland this way. I was in Amsterdam, I think, and you can type in your current place. So say Amsterdam, and then you can go search anywhere and it'll come up with the cheapest flight. So you could literally be like, okay, I'm flying Morocco for $50. Like it's actually crazy. But if you have the time to do it, I recommend doing it. Just do it.
yeah, do it. Pick a place. India, Micronesia. I mean, if you're going to Micronesia, I hope you're a scuba diver because if you're not, there's not
You're not
really
going to do
much.
anything.
There's nothing else there really. I mean the island itself is absolutely stunning and beautiful, but it's not built up. They don't have infrastructure. There's not like shopping malls and beaches and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just an underwater paradise. Jacques Cousteau actually went there he went there, and that's why it's become like such a big diving mecca. So thanks to Jacques Cousteau. That's why, and I'd say these are more like adventure places, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely adventure. You've got to have the adventure spirit. Again, like I said, there's such a difference between a vacation and travel, like
Yeah.
traveling. Traveling to just explore new cultures is very different to just being like, I want to go drink champagne in the south of France. Like,
Which
no.
is also nice. But
That's very nice, and they do like to do that. But feed your soul, man. Get out there and learn about the world. Like that's why we're fortunate enough to travel in this day and age. That's why it is a lot easier. And and thanks to social media, I know we slated a lot, but it really I see so many places. I'm like, I have to go there. Like,
yeah, me
my
too.
save list is ridiculous.
Yeah, I still have such a huge list. And I would say, like, for people that are listening that are thinking about going to these places, so I highly recommend, get yourself a good backpack. They are dependent on height, like, so for me, a little shorty.
Midget.
Yeah, like, so if you're going to backpack, get yourself fitted with like a really nice backpack. Do sign up for like the government like warnings and enroll
really
in the
good
embassy,
point.
know where the embassy is, just God forbid like something does happen.
And it's good for visas and stuff too. A lot of countries,
Yep.
depending where you're from, obviously, like you need a tourist visa to enter, and
they
all
can
these
help you
other
with all
things.
that.
Yeah.
I highly recommend traveling with like a travel insurance, like a health, like I do Dan because I'm a scuba diver. So like if I have a diving incident or an accident, they'll pay to have me airlifted or like into a hyperbaric chamber if I need to, which is super important.
That sounds really good.
Yeah. And then also like just before you go, make sure all your like vaccines and medical, like because
Yeah.
some of these places that you're traveling might require different,
Mm-hmm.
I know when I went to Asia, like dengue fever was quite rampant. So,
Yeah.
Just make sure you're prepared, but don't be scared. Like these places are the
It's
most
meant to
amazing.
take you out of your comfort
Yeah.
zone. Like it is meant to teach you and let it teach you.
Yeah.
Like it's like being at school, you can sit down, you can study a place, but when you do the practical, so when you're there, you learn so much more, you
Yeah.
absorb so much more because it's right in front of your eyes, and no one can ever take what I've seen away from me. And
Go with an
yeah,
open mind
go
for sure.
be respectful,
Be respectful
and yeah,
and go
yeah,
with an open mind
and live your
and
best
be
life.
safe. Like just, these like we like to think like, oh, like I'm from America, like this is super safe, but bad shit and bad people are
Happens
everywhere. And
everywhere. I'm
it
from one of the
doesn't,
safest
yeah,
countries in the world, and we still have bad shit happen. So like,
yeah.
don't be
Don't let
fooled.
that stop you.
Be
Like,
smart. Be obviously don't be an idiot. Be street smart, but
yeah,
do it. Get
do
out
it. Go
there.
out there. If
This
anyone's
is your
listening.
sign. This is officially your sign.
Yeah. So I think we should like tell people to let us know if this has encouraged them to go somewhere.
Yes. And
Mm.
if like, and where and why? Like, I would love to hear that.
Or share their far afield stories. I'd love to hear it. Like especially for women so that we can get other women, comfortable and wanting to go
Yeah.
these places. It's awesome.